Hey everyone, M Stashed here. I'm just kidding. But do you guys remember when I had a mustache and I couldn't kiss my wife anymore? Or go around schools? Or coach my son's hockey team because some of the kids were crying? I remember. But we're back today and I've got an interesting video for you. I want to talk about some top DPS options going into the next expansion. There's going to be a new activity, the Sundial, and you need the best bang for your buck if you're trying to kill stuff. So let's talk about some top tier weapons. Now, I'm going to talk about IZANAGI'S Burden because I think this is the best weapon. It is the best weapon, and they're buffing it further in the next DLC or season or whatever you want to call it. Now, normally in a list, you wait for the best weapon at the end because you want to keep people watching. I'm not wasting your time here. IZANAGI'S Burden is nuts. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard about this gun, and people have been ranting and raving about it and freaking out about it, and people were angry about it because for the past month or two, there's been issues with the quest line. When the new Shadowkeep DLC launched, this quest line was broken, and then they tried to fix it, and they broke it again. Well, as of now, I think you can get this properly, but completing the questline for IZANAGI'S Burden should be on the very top of your priority list. There's a couple things that set this weapon apart, and there's a couple reasons why now this has become a top tier weapon. In the past, in the last expansions, you were able to use something like the Luna Faction Boots or the Titan's Rallying Barricade and never have to reload your weapon. So something like this wasn't that great because you couldn't abuse that mechanic of never having to reload. That's why grenade launchers have been so damn good. Mountaintop was nuts. There's a bunch of different weapons that perform better. But after removing that, everyone has to reload. And so the value of IZANAGI'S Burden skyrocketed. Let's look at why. With the Honed Edge perk, holding a reload consumes the magazine and loads a round of additional range and damage. And if you have the catalyst, you load one extra bullet. With that extra bullet, and with all the other bullets stacked together, you have this crazy one-hit potential on many enemies in the game, but also a DPS monster when you look at the overall output of this weapon. And better yet, it uses special ammo. You can use Sniper Scavenger, Sniper Finder. There's multiple ways to get a ton of ammo for this weapon, and you're pretty much always going to have a top tier DPS weapon available with ammo. You can use it pretty much 24/7 in something like a raid or even a strike. IZANAGI'S Burden is nuts, and if you're going against big, beefy, tough enemies like during the Sundial, you want to put them down as fast as you can. The reason why is because it's similar to the Menagerie, and with the bar filling up, you need to kill these big enemies and get progress and push your way through to finish this activity ASAP. That means it has even more value. It's good against raid bosses, but it's great if multiple people are using it and are able to one or two shot some of these big tanky enemies, like champions or mini bosses within the activity. IZANAGI'S Burden has everything you could possibly need. It's got a reload mechanic that you're going to have to do anyways. You're going to have burst damage. You're going to have accessible long-range damage for smaller enemies if you don't want to use the Catalyst and the Honed Edge perk. And it's all around great, because there's awesome DPS weapons on top of it for your heavy slot, right? You have this amazing weapon in one of the slots, but you still have good damage from your heavy. And that's what makes this so popular. Yeah, you can use Whisper of the Worm, but you don't have this amazing DPS weapon after you're out of ammo or power ammo. Yeah, you can use the Mountaintop, but IZANAGI'S Burden fills that role like no other weapon in the game, and you need to get this ASAP. On top of that, they're adding an enhanced sniper loader to the relic or the artifact. That's right. It's going to cause one mod slot or two mod slots to reload your sniper even faster than you already could, making this the absolute best weapon in the game. Now, another cool weapon that I've got is the Soul Survivor. This is something you can get from Reckoning or even Gambit Prime, and this one has an awesome role. Firing line, triple tap, and the appended mag, as well as a backup mag, gives it 7 shots in the magazine. Now, after landing a bunch of crits, you continue to get ammo into that magazine, and you end up getting like 11 shots from this sniper before you have to reload. With the enhanced reloading perk, you're going to be back to doing DPS, and something like this, or a variation of this, could be very good for doing overall DPS. I personally think this is going to be one of the best weapons if you want to use a legendary variant, and maybe you want to use a different exotic because you don't have the IZANAGI'S Burden, but this is something to look out for as well. Now, I've talked about IZANAGI'S Burden, I've talked about Soul Survivor, but I want to give you some other options that are going to be very good pickups going into the new DLC. One of them being the Outlast. Now, I don't personally have the perfect Outlast with Kill Clip, but the optimal role, in my opinion, would be Kill Clip, Feeding Frenzy, and then a mixture of ranged perks. You get some stability or whatever, but the reason you want Outlast is because Feeding Frenzy is nuts. Feeding Frenzy, if you hit him in the foot, if you hit him in the chest, if you hit him in the head, it gives you the reload speed of Outlaw. This is actually probably the best reloading perk in the game. So if you end up not getting a critical hit, you still have some amazing reload speed. But you can also pair it with Kill Clip and do some nutty things with this pulse rifle. The reason I also recommend it is because the artifact mods. Artifact mods are going to allow you to deal with unstoppable champions, barrier champions, overload champions, and pulse rifles are going to be one of the meta weapons in this DLC. If you don't have a god tier Outlast, you could also use something like a Claw of the Wolf. I've got one here that has Rampage Outlaw. Very good thing. It's got some reload speed. This is going to be a great weapon for DPS, and I'm probably going to go with this one until I can get a Kill Clip Feeding Frenzy Outlast. But make sure you're looking for a pulse with some damage boosts. You could also use something like a Go Figure, but that goes, I believe, in the slot of IZANAGI'S, so I don't think you should ever give this up. If you have this weapon, this should pretty much always be in your loadout. As I said before with the reloading changes, reloading is a big factor in overall DPS. In many of the raid bosses, you have a short window to do as much damage as possible. And if you're spending half the time reloading, well, you're not going to do that much damage, now are you? The reason Anarchy is so good is it does tick damage over time. You shoot a couple, switch to a different weapon, and you lay into the boss. An example of this would be using the Anarchy and shooting a couple of grenades at the boss, getting that tick damage, and then swapping over to the Soul Survivor. You unload with this magazine, you swap back to the Anarchy, lay into that again, and it can be a very good rotation for overall DPS. Now, let's say you don't have IZANAGI'S, let's say you don't have Anarchy. Those are two of my favorite weapons for DPS, but there's some other good ones as well. I want to talk about grenade launchers. These are still pretty much the meta for overall damage. If you've got spike grenades on it, you're pretty much set because this is a big boost to your damage, but if you can throw on something like Full Court on the Love and Death, this becomes a very, very good option for damage. Now, optimally, you'd want something like Field Prep to boost your reserves, but even Rangefinder can be good for some of those long-range shots. This boosts the velocity of the weapon, but this is an overall fantastic little grenade launcher. But there's multiple you can use. There's Swarm of the Raven, there's a couple Solar and Arc ones that are around, but what you're looking for is a 150 RPM grenade launcher with spike grenades, and your overall damage is going to be comparable to anyone that you're playing with. Now, the Prospector, you should get the Catalyst. The Catalyst gives you increased deeper pockets. You get a bigger magazine, or ammo reserves, which means you're going to have more ammo to throw down range. I don't have it right now, but get this Catalyst. If you have it, this could be a top tier weapon as well. Now, there's one weapon that I don't have, and that's the Wendigo grenade launcher. The Wendigo grenade launcher is amazing. I don't have it. I've seen footage of it. I'm just lazy, and I haven't been grinding strikes to get it. But if you have the Wendigo, that is an obvious option as well. So if I'm looking at my loadout, this is something that I would use. IZANAGI'S Burden, I'm going to use my Claw of the Wolf, as well as this grenade launcher, and that's pretty much going to be my loadout going into the next DLC. There's multiple variations you could do, but if you're not convinced that this is what you want to use, I've got one more option for you that I think is going to be a great choice. Whisper of the Worm is pretty accessible now that our power levels are higher, and this is actually a really good DPS weapon. It does use heavy ammo, but with the addition of the enhanced sniper loader, if you end up missing a shot or getting flinched out of it, at least you can recover better. That makes this a much safer choice than it typically is, because missing a shot with Whisper of the Worm really neuters your DPS. If you land all of them, it's amazing, but at least now, if you do miss a shot, you can recover and get a nice chunk of damage. I don't think this is my favorite option. IZANAGI'S is just better in pretty much every way, especially because then you have something like a grenade launcher to unload damage, but Whisper of the Worm is at least a decent pick going into the new DLC. Now, some other weapons you might want to consider or look at, something like the Go Figure. This is not a perfectly rolled one, but it's got Kill Clip, it's got Outlaw, it's got Appended Mag for a bunch of ammo there. There is probably one or two of these hanging around in your vault somewhere, I'm sure. You could use something like a Blast Furnace, but any pulse with some good rolls is going to be useful going into this new DLC. Another thing to not sleep on is honestly bows. If you've got a good bow, and I don't know because I don't use a lot of bows, I don't know what the best archetype of bow is. But if you've got Archer's Tempo, you've got Rampage, something like this is a viable option in a lot of activities, especially if you need those artifact mods to shut down champion enemies. I wouldn't sleep on the bows. There is some major potential here, okay? Even Leviathan's Breath, you might want to keep that thing around just in case. Now, another one. Delirium, 21 Delirium is always good. This machine gun is nuts. The killing tally never got nerfed, so the damage on this is one of the highest damage dealing perks. It's got the overflow, which means if you're doing a big horde mode activity with a bunch of enemies, running around and dying and dropping ammo, you can abuse the 21 Delirium to just be the trash mob killer. Right? This thing is nuts. I got one more. One more main thing I want to show. We've talked about grenade launchers. They're good. They've been good for a long time. Bows might be good. Pulses are good, right? There's a sniper. We've got the IZANAGI'S Burden. Maybe you want to use Monte Carlo. I know that there's a bunch of options, but there's one more thing I want to talk about because I think that this is important for your team. Divinity. Some people are really unlucky and they don't have the Anarchy. Maybe you don't have IZANAGI'S, but if you have the Divinity, you should be the guy on your team. You only need one. You only need one. But the ease of use of Divinity, the effect that it has on your team's damage and accessibility, aka not missing shots with Whisper or missing shots with IZANAGI, you can't trump this thing. There should always be one on your team if you're doing a 6-man activity, and I think that this is a top-tier pick going into the next expansion. That's pretty much it, guys. I mean, if there's a hidden one, you could use the Mountaintop. I know that there's other little hidden ones, but you should probably go for the optimal thing. My loadout, what I'm going for this. The Outlast or the Claw of the Wolf. I'm going to be using IZANAGI'S Burden, and I'm personally going to be using this grenade launcher unless I unlock Wendigo, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon, because I don't want to do strikes. But this is going to be my loadout going in the DLC. If you can make something similar to this, you're going to be laughing, you're going to be doing good damage, no one's going to beat you up for being the lowest damage dealer on your team. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.